Bastard. This is Will Carey. Thank you for listening again, as always. This is a good week on the show. A couple of weekends ago, my guest today is my friend Kevin Froleiks, who's been on the show before. He's my first repeat guest, but I wanted to have him on again because Kevin recently, along with our mutual friend Patrick J. Riley, who I worked with both of them on the YouTube web series The Worst Landlord a few years ago. They recently debuted their musical, their original musical that they wrote about Lewis and Clark, and I went and saw it at the Creek in the Cave here in New York, and it was really great. Like, I truly enjoyed it. It was very well written. It was funny. The music was really catchy, and I really wanted to talk to Kevin about the process of putting the show together. And I thought initially we were going to talk for like half an hour. We'd talk about, writing songs, the whole process of putting the show together. But we ended up talking for almost an hour. And so I thought I should just release it as an entirely new episode because we got to kind of a really great place by the end of the show, and where we were kind of talked about taking ownership of our own path creatively, which is, having been in New York for about 6 years now, is something I've started to feel like I'm taking more control over, which has been nice. Kind of feeling like what I can do and where I can perform, I'm not dependent on other people saying that I can, which, if you're any kind of creative person, I think is an important place to get to, because that seems to be where we're at now. And just having something that you can control and have some ownership over, I find in this world where not much seems to be something that you can control, it's nice to be able to have a few things. And as a comic who's struggled and continues to struggle and will never stop, because it's what I love to do, it was a really great place to see where we're kind of, even though me and Kevin don't see each other very often, it was great to catch up with my friend and know that we're in our own ways moving forward creatively. So we'll go to my chat with Kevin momentarily. Before we get to that, I just want to real quickly plug, I will be performing my one-man show, Laughing Through the Sad, at Standard Toycraft in Williamsburg as part of the Tanks Solo Week Festival on December 9th at 8:30 p.m. Tickets are $10, and I'll have the link in the description. I hope some of you can make it out, because I'm really happy with the way the show has been going and the way it's been coming together, and I'm excited for people to see it. So that's December 9th at 8:30 p.m., and I hope to see you guys there. Just a little bit of setup. When me and Kevin started this conversation, it was about a little under a week since Donald Trump was elected president, and we hadn't seen each other to kind of debrief about our feelings about election night and where we think the country's going. So we talk about that a little bit, and then we're going to get into talking about his Lewis and Clark musical. Thank you for listening, everyone. And let's talk to my buddy Kevin.
The first woman president, and not have a fearmonger win, and then immediately I was like, oh, he's winning. Oh, but they counted. It was like Kentucky and Alabama that had reported, and it was like, well, we knew those were going to go, and then just gradually we're like, oh shit. Lisa's texting me just like, I think she might actually lose, and then at we were supposed to go till 11, and at 10 o'clock we were all just like, we're gonna go get drunk, and we just went to a bar and just drank for 2 hours, and then I just couldn't sleep, and I was like, I watched Family Guy and drank in my apartment.
Yeah, I was doing lights and sound for a show at the Pit, and for a sketch show, and I had the electoral map on Google, and I was like refreshing it every couple of seconds.
Yeah.
And as soon as I saw that Florida went, that's when I, in my mind, decided, oh, he's gonna win.
Oh, here we go again.
Yeah, that's when I decided, okay, he's gonna win. But I like anything, like the same way, like, if you're and the same way if you're like watching like a I don't know, a sports game or something, and
Sure.
your team's losing, and you're like, well, not until the final whistle blows. And then
Yeah, I held on for a while. And then it just turned into me being like, oh, I hope New Hampshire doesn't go Trump, because it was very 50-50 the entire time.
Right.
And then it went Hillary, but only by 1,400 votes, which I was like, what is going on there? And it's a bunch of libertarians that want to watch the world burn.
Of course.
That's a big population of New Hampshire.
People who saw The Dark Knight and identified with the Joker throwing burning money.
Yeah, they just want. Yeah, exactly. There's no logic. They just want to see something. They just want to see the world burn.
Yeah, that's how I was. Like, Maryland went for Clinton, but Calvert County, where I grew up, went for Trump.
Yeah. I actually didn't even look at county by county, but I know just based on driving around my neighborhood when I went home last, like just looking at signs in the yards, it's 50-50. Like, I think the whole state was pretty evenly split, and it just barely went blue. But yeah, so Tuesday was rough. Wednesday, I might as well have just stayed home from work. Like, I got nothing done that whole day.
Yeah, I was like just because I stayed up till like 4 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, I stayed up till about 2.
Watching the live stream, and like after the show, like I ran into Gabe Pachinko and a couple of other people, and we're just sort of like trying to piece together the very real, the early remnants of, okay, how did this happen? Could it have gone any other way? And what are we going to do next?
Yeah.
And then I went and drank with Havla for like 4 hours.
Yeah, I didn't know what else to do. Wednesday,
I also ate burritos like I was never going to get another one.
You might not. They just won't be as good. They'll be made by, I don't know.
They'll be
business students.
Exactly.
Yeah. On Wednesday, I had my Dynamic Duos show, and I've never wanted to do a show less in my life than Wednesday after the election. And it was just, everybody there was just like, I don't even feel like doing anything funny. We tried to make it funny. We had like 3 people from the bar come in to watch it, and like, they only lasted like 10 minutes. Like, nope, I'm not in the mood for this. And I was like, I understand. And the whole show was just none of this should happen, but we're going to do it anyways. And then.
Yeah, I still haven't gotten on stage since the election. I've been like editing and doing tech for stuff.
Yeah. I've been doing a lot of solitude the last week.
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of where I'm at. That and like deciding, okay, am I going to have to join some sort of underground Rebel Alliance-esque kind of movement, or am I going to call? How do I get the number for like my senator or my congressman? Do I call my senator or my congressman? It's like a moment of it's like my first moment of feeling like, oh, I got to do more.
Yeah, I definitely had that too. And then like it's weird because like conservative friends go one of 2 ways, where they're either like vindictive, like I told you so, like I knew this was going to happen, and blah blah blah, like kind of throwing it in faces. Most of them are just like, now we just need to come together, which is what happens. Like, I've only been conscious for a few elections at this point, but like every time it's like, well, you lost fair and square, we gotta come together as one nation. But then all my like liberal friends, which makes up most of my friends,
same,
they're all either like, what are we gonna do, or like you'll be like, this is because of underlying racism and people that are too ignorant to see it, and then they'll argue with me like, no, if you're ignorant to racism, then you're also racist, and then we're arguing even though we agree, and it's just terminology. I've had a lot of that, so like I'll just be like, we need to look into this and this, and it's like, well, why weren't we doing it before? And it's like, because things weren't messed up before.
Right. Now things are messed up. Exactly. Things are messed up now, so we've got to reconfigure.
Yeah. I was like, I don't know. I could just pretend that everything's fine, but I don't know. Yeah. So that's what the last week has been like.
Yeah, dude, same. I'm glad that we could catch up on this too.
I feel like it's how you need to start every conversation, not just on a podcast, but like anytime you see someone, just like, how'd you handle the election, and just start from there.
Yeah,
it's. I think it's healthy.
Yeah, I think so, because otherwise it's just, isolation and confusion.
Yeah, I'm still very confused, but
I'm confused. And I was like, and unlike I think a lot of people I know, I wasn't 100% convinced it was going to be a blowout for Hillary. Like I think some people were.
Yeah, no, I was.
I had it in the back of my head. It's like, no, these people seem a bit too confident for it to go their way.
I really didn't think he was going to win, but I did know that if she won, it would be very, very close.
Yes.
Like I definitely could, just like, because to say it's definitely going to go her, I was like, that's writing off an entire massive population of the country. And I knew like those like rural areas especially were just like they feel just as disenfranchised regardless of race, whatever.
Right.
Like they just feel neglected, and she's like the face of liberal elite, you know, quote unquote, just like these
exactly.
which is ironic because Trump's a businessman from New York. Like both of them are the most unlikable, but he was on.
Exactly.
He's a reality TV star. So if anyone was going to do it, plenty of billionaires and businessmen have run.
Yeah,
Romney didn't win.
Yeah, well, and this is, I think, just kind of the way maybe the culture at large is now, where you have to be so outrageous just to penetrate through the constant barrage of noise and trending, shareable content, which makes me want to stab myself in the heart whenever I think in that. In those,
a podcast seems like the best way to speak out against clickable, shareable content.
I know, right? Well, that would be like if I wrote the teaser for this. It's like, Will Carey and Kevin Froleiks like just expose on Trump.
Heckler gets murdered. And
then no one knows what your stand-up's like.
No, yeah. The thing that, and we don't have to talk about the election the whole time. I know that's not what we're here. But the only other thing was like I was getting so frustrated with so many people being like, he doesn't really have a chance though, right? Like these polls say this, and like I know polls all said like heavily Clinton, but like people just kept saying like, well, there's no way Trump could actually win. Like he's not a real candidate. I'm like, he's the nominee.
He is
on the ballot. He has a 50-50 chance. Like, but this poll says that he has a 50% chance of winning.
Exactly.
And he did.
Yeah, and if he's the nominee, then he's a real candidate.
Yeah,
and
that's 50%.
And the thing that you can always that I hope people remember from this is that the angry people that feel disenfranchised by the government and the political system that is not listening to their concerns or feels like they're being ignored or left behind, those people probably don't respond to polls.
No, yeah. I mean, they definitely
they probably don't answer questions.
No, they respond mostly to like the emotional side, and in a lot of ways, Obama, like when I think back to 2008, like it was the same thing. All the people that felt disenfranchised by Bush, which you know, obviously black voters were just like, oh my God, a black president. That was a part of it. But like college kids were all just like, oh, this is like a guy that's going to try to make things not shitty for me when I get out of college. This is a guy that's like, you know, speaking out against X, Y, and Z that were really like, it didn't affect us yet, but we knew it was going to affect us. So I don't know. I think every candidate kind of, they win based on who's been disenfranchised and who sees them as like the beacon. And so Trump is like, in a bizarro kind of different way, he was the great hope that Obama was. Mm-hmm. So I do get that, but it's like, oh, so much of what he said. Part of me really hopes that he just messes up, like not in a way that affects people, but just in a can't get anything done because he doesn't know what he's doing.
Yeah. Well, Obama's already has no idea. It's like, oh, I've got to replace the entire West Wing staff.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's where we're at now.
Yeah.
Which is,
so
this is good. I miss this, man.
Yeah.
I miss this back and forth because even though I consider you like one of my best friends.
Yeah.
I think while we're still in comedy, we're in sort of focusing on two different camps right now.
Yeah, definitely. Sense. I mean, you're like working on this, and you've got the one man show, and
a lot of
I didn't know you were doing tech stuff. Like yeah, you've got a lot of different. You've got a lot of different things going.
Yeah,
on.
a lot of like singular things I can do alone in a room.
Yeah.
Or in the dark. And you are like a collaborator. Like you're putting together like. You're orchestrating other humans and putting together really interesting and unique things, which is part of which is why I wanted you to come back on the show so we could talk about this more. You co-wrote and performed and starred in a musical.
Yes, I did.
and not like the kind of. It's really fucking good.
Oh, thanks.
It's a real show.
Yeah.
I really dig that about it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a real thing, and a lot of people were surprised. And I know there's not. Some people were surprised, like, oh, I expected that to be terrible. And some people, like you, are good friends that were like, oh, I was going to be supportive as a friend, but I didn't expect to enjoy it as much as I did.
Right.
Like my good friends, that was like their main thing was like, oh, I thought I would just like it because, hey, my friends did a thing. But this was like actually good. Like even like snarky friends of mine were like, yeah, I can't say anything bad because that was so enjoyable. Just like tighten it, keep working on it, and
yeah, exactly. And that's not meant to like insult you.
No.
What you do, but it's like it's really cool when someone that you're friends with and peers with does something that's really really great.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, I want to see more of that, and then infiltrate my way into it somehow. Kidding, no.
Yeah.
So let's talk about it a little bit. So. For people if you are listening and don't know what we're talking about, Kevin recently debuted his Lewis and Clark musical. What's the full title of the show again?
It's called Great Frontier, a poorly researched musical about Lewis and Clark.
And tell me what the tagline is. There's another tagline, right?
The unofficial tagline for it is "Making America Great for the First Time," which in hindsight,
brilliant.
Yeah, it was funnier before he got elected, but it's still kind of funny.
Yeah. So this is what I want to talk about because I've known you for a while and we talk music a lot. We share some common ground, even though I think I like a lot of like more alternative rock and stuff. And I know you too. This is how I'm going to connect it. I know you to. I don't know you to be a huge musical theater person, but I know you to be a fan of a huge production, like all the prog rock that you're really into, like these big sweeping orchestrations and these like all these concept albums that kind of are in a way, I think, musicals in their own right. They're just not on stage.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, a lot of musicals do start as concept albums in some way. Like Tommy is like a literal, it started as The Who's concept album, and then later Pete Townsend turned it into like a musical or a rock opera, as he calls it. But like a lot of, there's a few other ones that people were like, I wrote a musical, but I don't have the money to make it of a stage production, so they make it an album. Quote unquote an album. Yeah, a concept album. I think Scarlet Pimpernel, the musical, started out that way. A few others. I wrote the musical, the Lewis and Clark one, with Pat Riley, and he's a huge, like, he only listens to musical theater.
Right. Did you listen to musical theater at all before this?
Not obsessively. There were a few shows, like a few classic shows that I liked, like the shows that we did in high school. I still have like songs from Anything Goes and Man of La Mancha, Annie Get Your Gun. Like those classic ones were the ones that we always did in high school.
Right.
And I was either friends with someone in the show or in the orchestra, or I was always somehow involved with one of those shows. So they're still stuck in my head today. But I think like recently I've gotten to see more shows. And so like seeing like Book of Mormon or Something Rotten.
So good.
Book of Mormon's amazing. Something Rotten is, Book of Mormon's very funny, but Something Rotten is like the tightest show I've ever seen. Like just like story wise, the way the music fits in with it, the character, like it's so great. But I mean Hamilton, everybody's listening to. Really though, like it's the last year when I started working on a musical before I really started like listening and getting in depth with it.
What were some of the things you were learning about? First off, I want you to answer that question.
Okay.
I'm curious. And then I've got a follow-up. I kind of want to know what were some of the things as you started to get more into musical theater, or what are some of the things that you and Pat would talk about as far as like structure, format, song composition? Because I know you play banjo, but I imagine writing songs for musical theater is an entirely different animal. I would also kind of love to know the kernel of the idea that started this thing.
Okay. So let's go one at a time. What was the first question?
Okay. Well, why don't you tell me how the idea gets started first?
Okay. So the kernel of the idea, it started last Halloween. Pat and our friend Kathy Humes had the idea to do a Halloween cabaret show. They wanted to do just at a bar. They would get the karaoke tracks for Rocky Horror Picture Show and Little Shop of Horrors, and then they would have us, then various friends of theirs, dress up, and then we were gonna do like a low budget performance of both musicals where we would do the karaoke from both shows, and then in between each song we would just improvise the plot of both of those movies. Because you have to license a musical, but karaoke is legal, and so is improv. So we just did a karaoke improv version of these two shows. We did both shows in a half hour. There was an intermission. And it was just like a goofy thing that we did, but like I got really into it because Pat let me be Seymour from Little Shop and Brad from Rocky Horror. And Rocky Horror, like I do love it, but like Little Shop is one of my favorite. I've never gotten to see it on stage, but I love that movie so much. I love all the songs from it, and so I was very excited to play Seymour. And we there were a few of us, everybody took it seriously, but a few of us like really like got in depth with it and like watched the movie and like studied like different things that we can do and like and then it was over and we all just got so depressed because we'd worked so hard on it, and then it went great, but then it was just gone. And for like a month I was working on like a sketch show and just going back to open mics and doing stand up and everything like that, and it just didn't feel as good as working on that. So then me and Pat we're both just like, we're both very depressed. And I was like, we should just write a musical. And the joke that I think I said was like, that way we'll have like 4 years of working on something and then we won't be depressed. And he was like, we should write a musical. And we went to a bar and got a beer. I think we were already at the bar, and then we just got it. We were with friends, and then we just ordered another beer and went to a totally separate table and just started talking about like, what can we do for a musical? And we were trying to come up with like original musical ideas, but it kept it was like harder to grasp onto like a totally unique thing. And we were getting like too meta with it, where it's like, what if we're Kevin and Patrick and we're working on this? I was like, I don't know, who would want to see that? Like, I don't need that. I don't know. It was like too meta, where it was like us playing ourselves, trying to do something like that. And then, you know, obviously Hamilton's a huge show right now, but one of the things I suggested was like, what if we pick another historic event? But unlike Hamilton, we just do no research in it so that it's more comedy than musical. And Pat really liked that. And we just listed off historical events. I think we considered the moon landing. We considered doing like the Kennedy-Nixon debates. We listed a bunch of things, and the whole idea was like we wanted it to be something where me and Pat could be the lead characters, so that we could just write for ourselves.
Right.
And then eventually we said Lewis and Clark, and then that, for whatever reason, like we grabbed onto that and was like, oh, that's a good one because everybody knows the story of Lewis and Clark.
Yes.
We can make as many jokes as we want about it. We can get things wrong and it'll be funny because we all know the story. We know what it's supposed to be. So that was kind of the first kernel of the idea, was like we want to do a historical musical so that we'd have some sort of framework, but we did want it to be original instead of like an adaptation of anything. So the way we made it original was we just got all the facts wrong, and that was kind of the basic idea, was take something that's not original but then ignore everything that makes it that thing. So really the whole story, the only thing that's accurate are the people involved, like the Lewis Clark, Sacagawea, Thomas Jefferson's a character, like that's the only part of it that actually is accurate, but otherwise it's totally just off the rails. It's like if Mel Brooks wrote a musical about Lewis and Clark. Like it's a total farce type of.
So this is your Blazing Saddles.
Yeah, Blazing Saddles was definitely something that I watched a few times. There's a character in it. His name is Chief Running Joke in Great Frontier. And,
great name.
He's a. I think Pat came up with that. I'll let him know that you like it. It was when he said it, I was like, that might be offensive, but that's the funniest thing we can name a Native American chief in this. And there's like running jokes throughout the show. So like,
and also the white the white privilege takes enough shots in the music in your show as well that I think.
Yeah, we opened the show with making fun of white people just so that it's underlying the whole thing. So that song is great. That song is great. I love it.
Is there a recording of that yet?
Not yet. We're trying to submit the show to a few festivals and workshops, and so the piano player is hopefully sending me recordings of her playing the piano so that I can record the vocals over it.
Yeah.
So hopefully we'll have that soon. We want to like put like a quote unquote demo CD out somewhere just to
your concept record.
Basically, yeah, with the songs that we can get recorded.
Yes. So okay, so you and Pat come up with this idea to kind of do Lewis and Clark and to kind of be loose with the facts.
Yep.
For the purposes of comedy. So let me ask you this: did the story comes first, and then you write songs based on certain plot points? How does the music get done?
I know that at first we met in like diners, or we'd go to like the creek or somewhere. But like we'd meet somewhere, and we were like, all right, let's figure out what the actual story would be. And so we didn't. Most musicals are in 2 acts. We wrote it more like you would write like a movie or a short film, where it was like a 3-act arc structure. Mm-hmm. The original idea was like, let's make it 45 minutes. We'll make it a 1-act thing.
Yeah.
And then like, it'd be 1-act length, but it would be like 15 minutes, 15 minutes, 15 minutes. And then, because we were like, oh, it's Lewis and Clark. We already have a built-in structure. They're the beginning of the journey, the middle of the journey where everything will go wrong. And then at the end, they finally make it to the Pacific Ocean. Like we knew that was going to be the through line of it. So we kind of just went through like, if we think about it as Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, each one's 15 minutes. What do we put in each one? So we figured out like what the story was very loosely. I found the notes that we took, and like a lot of it got changed, but it was, we basically like set it up as like Thomas Jefferson is very lazy as a president. He doesn't want America to expand because it makes his job harder. Mm-hmm. And then in walk Lewis and Clark, who found out about the Louisiana Purchase, and they want to become explorers. And he lets them go because he figures they're going to die on their way out west, and no one will want to explore again because it's too dangerous. And that's what sort of like led to the whole structure. And that way we could also like go back, and the president and his cabinet are like gambling on which state they're going to die in. Mm-hmm. Kind of like John Cleese's character in Rat Race. That was like kind of the inspiration for it. And so it goes back and forth between like Lewis and Clark trying to get to the Pacific Ocean, and then Jefferson placing bets on where they're gonna die and everything like that. So we started with that, and a few song ideas we had, like, because we knew we needed them. Like we needed a song where Lewis and Clark explain like what they want to do, why they want to explore. They have to sing about like exploring is a great thing. We knew that had to be in there. The first song idea that I had was for Just Stay Put, which is Thomas Jefferson singing about how Lewis and Clark should just stay put and not explore. Right.
And were you writing just lyrics, or were you writing music?
Yeah. So we then divided it up where I had a lot more ideas for the beginning of it. Like I figured out like what is the politics of this fake Lewis and Clark story. So like I had outlined like everything about Thomas Jefferson, like what's his deal. So I had a clearer idea of like what that was, and Pat had a good idea for like everything in the end, and like adding like love triangles and like all, like he knew how the story would resolve, so he worked on that, and then we worked on the middle section together, so that we could try to connect them. And Pat, I remember the first weekend we worked on it, Pat came over because he was doing he does comic books, and he was out in Long Island for a comic book convention, and on his train ride back he wrote the love song that Lewis sings to Sacagawea. Yeah. And he was so excited that he got off on the Woodside stop on the Long Island Railroad and came over and sang the song. He hadn't worked on the script at all. This was like the first weekend. He had a song before he had the scene. I wrote the scene just the way I wanted to do it. Was I wrote the scene first and then just put in like insert song about XYZ and just like left myself notes. And then I wrote lyrics for it. And what we did for the entire process was when we would write a song, we would sing it as a recording on our phone, just a cappella, and then send it to each other so that we could hear it. Yeah. And that's what I used to write the music. So we wrote the script first. The script was like 80 minutes long, so we missed the 45-minute thing. But even after cutting everything, we're like, well, everything in here is essential. So even though we've changed things here and there, it's still about 80 minutes. I think we're adding about 5 to 10 more minutes onto it, and it's going to be an actual 2-act with an intermission and everything. Yeah. We're adding a couple songs to it, but we had like an 80-minute show, and then we wrote the script first, and then we kind of went in and filled in songs, and then once the script was in a good place, that was when I started writing the music for it.
And were you composing on piano?
So,
because I always imagine all musical theater songs like start on piano.
Yeah, and I wanted to write it for piano, only because for budget reasons, I knew I was never going to be able to hire like a full band or a full orchestra or anything like that. So like, if you can only knowing that I would probably only be able to get one musician, and also I knew it was going to be a pain to coordinate actors for this, and I didn't want to add the stress of coordinating a live band for this. So I was like, the easiest thing to do would be to get a piano. It's essentially a one-person orchestra. You can do a lot with just one piano player. I don't play the piano. I understand what notes the keys are, but I don't know actually how to play it.
Yeah.
But I wrote it for piano and was just like, I hope I can find someone who knows how to play this. I studied music for like 11 years, so I knew music theory. I knew the basics of like how to write music. I'd never written like a song before in sheet music form, outside of like music theory classes in high school and college. So it was definitely a big challenge, but like I knew what my hand could play on a piano, just in terms of like reach on that. So I was like, well, if I keep that in mind and just keep it simple, then whoever plays this will definitely be able to play it. So I just kept it simple and knew like where notes should, and like I knew like what the range on the staff was and everything like that. So so that's what I did. I found a freeware program called MuseScore, which works kind of like Sibelius or Finale, but it's free. It's a freeware program. I used to have a bootleg copy of Sibelius, the music notation program, from a music major friend of mine. But I got a new laptop and lost that copy. It was also like Sibelius 2 from like 2004. So it was very old. And I was like, it's been 12 years since I got that one. There must be a free version out there. And sure enough, there was. So I wrote it on that. I had to like relearn how to do all of it. But I mean, 11 years of music theory, I haven't really played music like reading off of sheet music in probably about 6 or 7 years, but it was drilled into me so much that I still remember the circle of fifths, and I know my scales and all that. So I was able to like figure things out. And then honestly, I did a lot of Googling of music theory just to like figure it, because I could hear it very clearly in my head, but I just didn't know how to write it. So
so you're like sitting there with a computer, and then your sheet music going, every good boy does find just note, and then no, it's mezzo forte. I didn't put too much in the dynamics, just because I was like, I don't want to get that technical. So we just kind of felt it out, and I was like, quiet. I knew like quiet down here because someone's gonna talk while this is being played. So that was it. That was like the extent of the dynamics in it. But yeah, so that was how I wrote it, was lyrics first, and then I would listen to these voicemail recordings, and then I would try to arrange it basically from that. And how did so how long did it take from your that first drink when you came up with the idea to where you started like getting like tell me now about the process of well, actually, before we get to that, kind of tell me what were some of the things you picked up on as far as like song structure when composing for musical theater. Yeah.
So I read a book about, I can't remember what it was called. I read it like back in like February or March this year, when I was like first starting to write the music for it, and it was basically about like the song's place in a musical, and it was very interesting. But it just talked about like the different types of songs in it. Like there's like the I Want song, which every musical has, like the character who, it's like the thesis statement of that main character. Like why do we care about this character? What are we trying to watch them achieve? It needs some sort of song where like you understand what they're trying to overcome and everything like that. You need some sort of song. Basically any major bullet point of the show needs its own song in a musical. Some of them are, the typical musical thing where people just break in a song for no reason. Something Rotten makes fun of that with an entire 8-minute song about how musicals...
About breaking into song.
Yeah, about breaking into song for no reason. Some of them, I forget the words, like diegetic or diegesic or... Diegetic.
Oh, yeah. I know the term from film school. Like sound that's like in the world versus sound that's not in the world.
Yeah. Whereas so like it's non-diegetic when people just start singing for no reason and nobody thinks it's weird. Nobody As far as those characters are concerned, they're just normally communicating with each other. Like all of Les Mis is singing,
just normal, and that's just normal communication.
Yeah, but in a show like
I don't know, Chicago maybe.
Chicago, there's like dance numbers in it. Cabaret is all there's a show going on and they're all singing this song.
Exactly, which is why I think part of the concept of when they did the movie version of Chicago was they created a concept of. Okay, thanks. Behind the curtain. Behind the curtain. Part of the concept of the Chicago musical, movie version of the Chicago musical was that all the songs had to be like a musical that was happening in Roxy's head.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is why I think Class got cut, because that she wasn't in that scene.
Right. For like song structure stuff, actually what really helped, because again, I've never written a song, but I've listened to a lot of music. So like basic, like, you know, verse, chorus, bridge, verse, chorus, like all those basic pop song structures, I was kind of familiar with.
You had never written songs for at all, or just for musicals?
Really for both. I mean, I played in bands when I was in high school and college, but I never wrote any songs. Like I played saxophone, or like I played like wind instruments. Like people would just
that girl from MTV's Made.
Yeah, that was one of them. I was in a ska band for a bit, so I would like write like horn parts for it. But I never was.
You were never the principal songwriter.
Absolutely not. Yeah, I never really had any interest in it. A couple times I tried to, but the songs would be more, you know, funny, and they'd be like, "No, we're like a serious band. Like I have like lyrics that I've got to expose my feelings and everything." I was like, "Yeah, I just want to write a song that's in the style of this doo-wop thing, because I think doo-wop's a funny genre." So I'd never really done. I mean,
so this was really the first time you were doing a lot of different things creatively you had never done before.
Yeah, and there was like we had the Worst Landlord web series, and I wrote songs for that.
Yes.
So I guess there was that, but this was like, even though they were supposed to be funny because it's a comedy musical, like I'd never actually like seriously thought about the song structure. So for a lot of them, it was always like, I know kind of like the mood that this needs to fix. Like there's a song called Rising in the West. It's the end of like the big first, it's the beginning of Lewis and Clark's journey. And it's just them, like, it's like their road song. It's like we're off to see the wizard.
It's their going the distance.
It's their going the distance. And the song that I knew what I wanted it to be, like this kind of like cowboy, like, yeah, type of song, you know? Like I wanted you to hear the whip crack while it was happening. So I listened to the theme from Blazing Saddles a lot, because I was like, that's like the mood that I want this song to have, is this like adventure type of song.
Yeah.
So I would do a lot of that, and just kind of like hearing, a lot of my, at least in the beginning, like I wrote a lot of songs where it was just like verse, chorus. Like it would just seem kind of monotonous. So like learning where to put like a bridge section from another character, kind of came into play.
And then like the parts where you can have like dialogue happen.
Yeah. And there were some parts where I'm like, oh, this would do very well if there was dialogue. And so it was always kind of like, I would like record myself singing it, and then me and Pat would listen to it, and then we'd kind of be like, that doesn't sound right, or I think we need to add something here. So there were a lot of songs that changed just because like it didn't sound or feel right. Sometimes it was because I would be writing it and realize like, oh, we just went from like 3/4 to 4/4 for no reason. So trying to like tweak the melody so it sounded more in place. Yeah, so it was definitely different. We didn't really go too crazy with like song structure. We wanted it to be easy on the ears, so to speak. We didn't, as much as I would love to write some weird prog rock, long Pink Floyd sounding Jethro Tull, complicated thing.
I feel that you have like, you know, the keyboardist from Yes had like an ice ballet based off of King Arthur.
Oh yeah, he had a bunch of weird concept albums like that.
I have a feeling you have one of those in you somewhere, and this is the first signs of it.
I would love to. I just listened. It's Rick Wakeman. He has like a bunch of amazing concept albums. He has one about Journey of the Sun of the Earth. He has one based on 1984 where Shaka Khan sings lead on it, and it's amazing. Really? But it's like so synthy and ridiculous because it was like from the 80s, and Rick Wakeman was just amazed that he could have a million keyboards around him at all times.
Oh, exactly. Is he still alive? Is he still?
I think so. Yeah.
Man, the concept musical he will have to make
I hope he does. Yeah,
for Trump's America.
Yeah. I would love to make some. If I thought about making like a short concept album, like a 5-song thing that's just making fun of like all those Rick Wakeman albums that I love, where it's all just like synthy and futuristic. And
yeah, exactly. You're gonna need like 10 Moog synthesizers, and you're gonna need like a cloak and a cape and a cloak that looks like a cape.
Yep.
So tell me about like getting like a piano player together and the cast because I feel like you guys had like actual production, like you had a rehearsal studio and stuff. So tell me a little bit about that.
Sure. So I think it was in March of this year. We finally had like a working script. Like we had finished the script. We'd read through it a bunch on our own. We had a bunch of meetings. Like we changed songs that we didn't like. We changed lines of dialogue, and we got it to a point where we were like, okay, we've taken this as far as we can on our own. We need to get other people to give us notes on it. So we sent it out to a few friends. We started letting people read it, and then we started thinking about, there were a couple characters that were like, oh, I know exactly which of our friends we want to play this part. But for that first reading, we just like, we took in whatever friends like were available, and we were like, we just need you to read this and then give us notes at the end. So we did that. We took a whole bunch of notes. We revamped it, and then a month later in April, we kind of had a better idea of who would play certain parts. So we had, and it was all friends of ours. Like it was all just like friends of ours that were nice enough to donate their time. One thing that we knew we wanted to do was partially to. One thing I was afraid of was making it a musical where we whitewash history, because the Lewis and Clark story is a very whitewashed story. Like when you actually think about what that meant for Native Americans, it's actually a horrible, horrible story.
Yes.
We just came in and we were like, this is ours now, and it's kind of messed up.
Yeah.
So even though it's like a not researched thing, like that was something I wanted there to be in there, so that I could feel okay about it.
Exactly. And it's the kind of detail that is very relevant to I think today.
Yeah, sadly.
And it's also because and then you avoid from just being another like bland historical kind of production.
Yeah, Pat loves 1776. I can't really get into it because it is just kind of this, I don't know, I'll give it another chance. I really don't know too much about it other than I listened to the music and I wasn't a fan of it. But maybe if in the context of the show I would like it more.
Yeah.
But with casting this, because we wanted Lewis and Clark to be the only two white people. There's even a joke where Sacagawea at the beginning in the opening song, she's like, don't worry, this isn't a song. The chorus of the opening song is "Don't ever trust the white men. They fooled us once, but they won't fool us again." And it's a whole song about how the Native Americans were constantly screwed over by white settlers.
Right.
And then there's like a little spoken word parts where she's like, "Hey, don't worry. Sorry to bum you out, but don't worry. This show's not going to get too serious. They want you to know it's a comedy. Most of it's been very poorly researched. It's not about." This isn't going to be a show about white guilt or white privilege. This is a show about America, which means that white people are the heroes. And that was like, we just like that opening song. I just wanted it to like have that underlying horror story that is kind of under any American or really any history story.
Exactly.
Any country you go to, it was founded on bloodshed of some sort.
Oh yeah.
Somebody took, except for Iceland. That was a free island that people just went to, and that's it. But for casting, we wanted it to be, I guess, a diverse cast where Lewis and Clark are the only white people. We did want Jefferson and the cabinet. We wanted to kind of make fun of Hamilton and just have everybody be black or Hispanic in the cabinet.
I love the shots you take at Hamilton too.
We do have a lot of it. I mean, we kind of had to. Here's how little I knew about history. I didn't put it together that they kind of happen like at the exact same time. Like Hamilton dies and Lewis and Clark start their journey in 1804. So there was overlap. Like we need to address it at least a couple times. Yeah. One joke that I really wanted to do very subtly but never mention it was have all the Native Americans be played by Indians. I wanted to find like Indian actors
Right.
or Indian American actors to play the Native Americans and just never address it and just have it be a dig at Columbus. We do make a Columbus joke in it a couple times, but like I thought that would be really funny. But the main thing was we just didn't want it to be an entire white cast.
Yes.
Especially since we addressed like Jefferson owning slaves, and it was like let's make Jefferson a large black man, and it's our friend Jared.
Yeah, who's just a teddy bear of a human.
Yeah,
Also, so.
yeah. So he had to play angry and evil and maniacal, but also lazy, and he did it well.
Yeah, and it's his performance is this beautiful combination of like every over the top like theater villain you've imagined. That's sort of like
Yeah.
Like always, like villains always have that kind of scheming sound they make.
Yes.
So how did you find like did you have like a casting call or
yeah.
to get like Sacagawea and
yeah, Sacagawea was the only part that we actually had a lot of trouble casting because Jefferson, we knew we wanted it to be Jared. He'd played Audrey too when we did that Little Shop Halloween thing, and so he had just this like he has this big deep voice and very like classic story. Like he grew up singing in church and just like singing loud, and so he has this deep booming voice and he can sing really well. And I was like, oh, that'd be perfect for Thomas Jefferson. We had we wrote Madison to be kind of this like. We wrote it to basically be our friend Maurice, so we wanted him. And then Pat had a couple of friends that came in and read for it. Everybody in the cast was like a friend of ours that we thought would be good for the part. Sacagawea was the one that we had a lot of trouble. We couldn't find someone. We didn't want Sacagawea to be white because she is like, she's the only female. She's the only, she's like one of the few non-white American heroes.
Yeah.
Like she's very important. It's like, well, and the whole thing again of like, I don't want to whitewash this where we make Sacagawea some like pretty young white girl, which is how she looks on the gold $1 coin. And like, it's how she's often like painted.
How she's often depicted.
Yeah. So I didn't want that. Pat had a couple of friends from his theater days in high school and college, but they were unavailable because they're working actors, and they couldn't do it. So finally, Ziva was our Sacagawea, and we've met her because she was a friend's girlfriend's roommate, and it was kind of weird because like people would be like, well, what are you looking for? I was like, can she sing? Yes. Okay, great. Does she do theater or acting? She does. Great. Okay, this is going to sound weird. What is her ethnicity? Because we can't have her be white. And they're like, well, she's Puerto Rican. I was like, oh, thank God. Okay, great. And then like she had some like acting reels online, and she was perfect for it because Sacagawea. Another horrifying thing we learned was that when she led them out west, she was only 13 years old.
Yeah, she's always depicted. You handled that brilliantly.
She's always depicted. Thank you. Yeah, that was something that originally Lewis and Sacagawea had like they had like actual sexual tension, and it all led to this big kiss scene. But then like
you find out she's 13.
We were trying to look up facts about Sacagawea to put into her big song, and then we found out that she was 12 when she was kidnapped. She was then raped by a fur trader. When she was 13, she had the baby and led them out west. I had the baby on the trail, famously.
With Lewis and Clark?
When she had the baby with her. I don't know if she gave birth on the trail, actually, or if it was like she had the baby in tow by the time they showed up. But she, I mean, that's like every picture. She's got the baby and the papoose on her back, and she led Lewis and Clark. But she was 13. She was a child with a baby. And she died at 24. So we found all that out, and I was like, well, I have to play Lewis. I don't want to say, I can't have a love story with a 13-year-old child now. Yeah. So instead we made it an anti-love story where at the end he finds out that she's only 13, and it's just like, whoop, nope, hands off.
Like, going over here.
Yeah, we also have a joke about, because Sacagawea on our show does not have a baby, because I was like, it's gross. Now I can never think about that baby in any way that's not disgusting.
Yeah, every time you see one of those coins, you're just gonna be like, oh man.
Yeah, I never see those coins anymore. What a short-lived tribute.
Yeah.
Thank God they want to put Harriet Tubman on the 20. At least those get used. So so Ziva looks, she's a very petite young lady. She's 24, 25, whatever. But she looked like she does look like she could play any age from 11 to 29. Like she's very ambiguous.
Yeah.
In terms of how old she actually is.
I was definitely thinking that. I was like, how did Kevin get a child?
Yeah. But she was perfect for it. So we had to find her just like after a real crapshoot, and luckily I post on Facebook. It's all I've talked about for the last year. Like it's like the biggest thing I've worked on ever. And so I've been tooting my own horn, or not bragging it, but just being like, here's what I'm working on right now, because I'm just so excited.
Yeah.
And I want people to like be interested in it for when we actually do it. So it was my friend and his girlfriend kept asking like how it's going, and then I mentioned that we were having trouble finding a Sacagawea, and they were like, oh, you should get my roommate. So that's how we got her. And then the piano player was a Craigslist hire. I just put on Craigslist exactly what the show was, what we needed, how long the show was, how many songs we had.
Yeah.
Let them know, like, you need to be able to play for an hour and a half. You need to be able to sight read, because we want to be able to just, like, I knew we weren't going to have many rehearsals. And then also mentioned, like, I can't pay you much. So I a criminally low amount of money. I think I said, like, I can't, we don't have a budget. We have to get props and costumes and rent out studio spaces. So I can pay like $150 or something. We had this one girl who was going to do it, and then she was an amazing piano player. She was very talented, plays in like jazz quartets all over the world. Now she's in New York studying to get a master's. So very brilliant, but plays all the time. And her schedule was so filled with gigs that she couldn't do it. And it got to a point where I was trying to like put a rehearsal schedule together. I had studio, because I have a sketch group as well, and so I knew all the good rehearsal spaces in the city because of that. And there was one that I'd found that was that every room had its own piano, so that was important because a lot of them will charge you like $12 an hour to rent the room, or like $40 an hour if you want the piano room. But this was one that all of them were the same price. They all had piano, so I was like, we're gonna go here for every single one. Perfect. So I finally like found days that worked. I made a schedule that worked with the whole cast. We wanted to do it back in the summer. We wanted to do the musical back in like July or August, but people's summer schedules were so messed up that we had to push it back to October. And so like September and October, I found dates that would work for everybody. And then the piano player was like, oh, I have gigs on those days of the week. Can we do this date? And I was like, I can't reschedule it. Like I finally got the whole cast on board. So we said, thank you, but we can't, we're not going to be able to work with you. And she was like, oh, okay, no worries. And then we put out another ad, and we found this other woman who met me at my office. Her name's Chi. She's a very sweet Japanese lady. Yeah. She was great. She was so.
Oh yeah, she was.
I was so. She was such a great piano player, but she was so excited to be a part of the show, and that made so much of a difference. Like she loved the song. She thought this. She spoke very little English. So. When I met her at my office, like we could barely have a conversation. Basically, like she asked for the music and I opened it, and then I would like point at certain things. She could understand it, just like speaking was not. It was definitely not her first language.
Yeah.
But she seemed very excited about it, and she was like, I can sight read. I was like, take it home, work on it. We'll see you in a couple weeks. And she showed up, and like Pat was like so nervous because she walked in and he was like trying to talk to her. He's like, oh my God, she doesn't speak. She barely speaks English. And I was like, she was the only one that responded to the ad. I didn't tell him that, but I was like, she's very nice. She's very excited about it. She
and enthusiastic.
She was enthusiastic.
That's important.
It's very important. And just like we were talking about like music, and I'm like, she speaks music, and that's the only language I need her to understand. Yeah. I know that we can talk at least about like music stuff. And it turns out she was great. Like she started playing and she could play the entire score just like at sight. She'd worked on it a little bit. And it was like such a big relief. Yeah. I mean, when people are good at sight reading, a lot of piano players are, because that's how you make money as a piano player is you get called to do a play, or you get called to work a church gig, auditions. So you have to be good at it if you're going to be a working piano player. But like she was great. Every week she would come in and like she would like offer suggestions on how they can make it easier for the singers. Like she was so involved in it. I was like, I feel guilty about how little I'm paying you, so I ended up paying her like a bit more. I was like, here, I gave her like, it wasn't much more. I think I gave her like an extra $100. I was like, this is for this. When we needed her to bring her own piano to the show, and I was like, I'll pay for your cab ride there. I'll make sure this is not costing you money to do this at all. 'Cause she was so great at it. And she was like the most reliable person in the cast. Like she was always there first. She was always like warmed up by the time we were ready to go. So, it was a Craigslist hire, but like it was lucky. Like we found someone who had availability and was also like excited about it. She wrote us so many nice emails, just being like, "Oh, this was so much fun. Thank you for letting me be a part of this." Like she was kind of self-deprecating, where she was like, "Oh, I hope this sounded okay," and it was like, that was perfect. What do you?
Yeah, and the actual show itself, which I, as a friend of yours, was so, and who's been in the trenches with you when we're like doing work in the door at comedy clubs to and performing in front of half empty rooms and 2/3 empty rooms and empty rooms. To see the Creek Theater packed was a real delight, and then to see like it crushing. Yeah, there was so much musical theater crushing happening in that room.
Thank you. Yeah,
where we both died 1,000 deaths when we first moved here.
Oh my God, it was such a symbolic victory, because I'll be honest, like I've never felt comfortable at that venue.
I'm there a lot more than you are.
Yeah, and I still go there. It's not like I avoid it. The only reason I'm not there as much now as I used to is just because I'm so busy with like sketch shows. But I mean, that's where I do my monthly sketch show. It's I live near it, so I do the open mics there, or I'll do shows there. But like, it's kind of like going back to your high school. Like I have a 10-year high school reunion coming up in a couple weeks. And I'm going to stop by, and I made sure that like my actual friends that I still keep in touch with, I'm like, are you going? Because I'll only go if you're there. I don't care about these other people. And they're just like, yeah, it's not like we had a bad high school experience. It's like, no, but that's what it's like, the Louis C.K. joke of like, this is where everything terrible happened to me. Like this town is where everything, and that's where like I first moved to New York and was trying to do stand up, and the worst bombings I've ever experienced were there on that stage. But it's a theater that I knew who to contact to do it. I knew it wouldn't cost me anything to actually do it there.
Which is it's so important that places like that exist.
Yeah.
In this city, because otherwise nothing cool will get made.
Yeah, and there's a few others that were like that too, but like I knew James, I knew Mary, like I knew the people there that I could talk to pull it off, and I also was comfortable with the space that we could like, even before we were able to rehearse there, like we could like visualize and figure out what the set was going to look like and where people would enter and everything like that. So it was like a symbolic victory to have the place packed out more than most shows there. Like in terms of real audience and not just like a comedian get together, like that's probably, Mary was telling me, she's like, this is probably the most packed this place has been without it being like Bill Burr stopping by or
Bill
something
Burr
like that.
Or Gethard.
Or
someone like that. I know exactly what you mean.
So it was like, and for it to go as well as it did, it was like, this is, and then, and then the show ends and they're like, hey, we got to get you got to skedaddle. We have another show afterwards. And it's like, all right, we're back to normal. But to like, like I've watched the tape a few times. I've like been working on the script and I'm just like, you can't take that back. Like this is that's the same stage where Mike Lawrence and Dan St. Germain and all these other people that are like famous and successful now shat on me for being a terrible comedian. I will admit, a terrible comedian. We're 2 blocks away from the comedy club where I was told you're a terrible comedian and you don't get to perform here. So it was a symbolic victory for it to be at that same place.
Well, fucking A, dude. That's and I relate to that so much because the first time I did my one-man show in front of maybe the second time I did it, I was on a double bill with David Lawson, friend of the show.
Yeah.
And we were doing a co-bill, and we packed out Bunga's Den, which is a bar I got fired from 5 years ago. Six now.
Yeah.
So that was a really great feeling, and I haven't done it at the Creek yet, but I imagine I will at some point. So coming like now that I've known you long enough and you've known me long enough that we are starting to have these like initial full circle moments, like leading up to something. It's really great to see, and it's really great that like all these times where it's just like where we're toiling, that I almost feel like it's starting to come towards something.
Yeah, so that's definitely how I feel. And it's been like I saw you do like a 15-minute set on Benel's show at the Experiment, and it was like a bunch of like I've known you long enough that I know all your jokes.
Right.
Unless you've written it in like the last year, because I haven't been out doing as much stand up. But like I've seen the one man show. I think I saw it once. It was like one of the first times that you did it.
Yeah, like I think I
saw it when you at that theater where we were like upstairs, and there was like a ballet studio thing going on downstairs. I forget, it's Lower East Side.
Dixon Place. Maybe.
Yes, yeah, it was there. Yeah. Like I went there, so like I knew the whole story, but like I haven't seen how much you've worked on it. And then so like I saw it, I was laughing my ass off. It was so funny. So I'm gonna go on December 9th when you do it again, because I'm excited to see how you've worked on it. And I think it's cool. Like there's like a few people that I know that we've started with, and like it's very interesting to see which ones just totally kind of quit, let the bitterness kill them. There are people that I thought were so funny, and I was so jealous that they kind of like started at the same time that I did, but they just immediately kind of blew up, even if it was just like, oh, now they're the new open mic favorite because they're just out the gate funny. And a lot of those people just don't do it anymore. Yeah. They just kind of like got sucked in that bubble.
Yeah, exactly. That bubble of, why am I not getting this show? Or
that's where it turns into. And then eventually that bitterness kind of knocks them down a peg. But like some people, they just get comfortable in that one thing because that's where they were welcomed, and they don't really do anything new. Whereas I don't know about you, but I've never felt, for a while, I never felt like I fit into any comedy clique. It took me a good 2 or 3 years. Like I had you, I had maybe 1 or 2 other friends in comedy.
For a while, even at the Creek, I didn't feel like I had anybody.
No. Yeah. And I still I'll go in and I get that high school feeling every single time, even though now it's almost a completely different group of people that go there.
It is like when I don't do as many open mics right now because
just time.
Exactly, because I'm mostly doing like my monthly show or my solo show or I'm doing something else. Like I'm still working. I have a regular thing that I do. Like I'm still writing and but to go into an open mic and not know anybody or or know like one person.
It's my favorite thing. I don't know how it makes you feel, but it's my favorite thing.
It's freeing in an odd way. It's a way of knowing of like, well, because the one way to take it is like, oh, you're still here and you don't, and there's all these new people. But I think the way to take it is, for me, it's like, and especially because it's a lot of new people, so it's a lot of like, you're like, oh, smoking pot, and like I hate your kind of
Tinder jokes
and that kind of stuff. And I'm not saying and I'm not saying, and I'm kind of am saying that I think I'm better to that, but I'm like not doing that.
Yeah. But we all did jokes like that. Even though I've never used Tinder, like we've all done like I'm dating jokes. And like we all go through those phases of.
Yeah. The ultimate victory for me over that is to know that I don't need to do 3 open mics a night to feel like I'm moving towards being a comedian. And when I go up and a joke that I felt good about doesn't go over well, or it's met with that silence, to be able to just sit in that silence and go, you can't hurt me.
Yeah, and to just be like, okay, I got to work on that.
Yeah, exactly.
I remember it used to destroy me. It used to like,
every bomb I thought, oh, all these people that I kind of like hate me.
Yeah, I would think that every single time. And now it's like a lot of those people that I was like, oh, that person probably hates me. They're in this inner circle. Like some of them are my best friends now. Ben Conrad, I thought that he was like, there was like a group of people and he was in that group of people. And I was just like, oh, that whole group hates me. And now Ben's one of my closest friends. He was like, no, we all started at the same time. Yeah. Just he was more sociable than I was. That was all it really was. I always felt that. That was another, actually, at the same time that I started writing the musical, was about the same time that I really started hitting a wall with being at open mics. And I think part of it was like I never really had I'm still here. There's all these new people. Everybody else has surpassed me, because I was so involved. I know where everybody's at, and I know the reality is, some of them have succeeded and they're on TV shows, they're writing professionally. A lot of them, they're not there because they quit. Yeah. A lot of them just like pulled the ripcord and were like, I'm done. So I always sort of saw it like, oh, I'm still here. Like, I know there's probably people looking like, oh, who would have thought that he'd be the one that made it through the all those hoops. Because there was like a scene in Boston when I was still in New Hampshire. There was like 5 people, and there was like 2 or 3 of them were like very, very funny, and they were at every open mic, and they would go all over New England. And there was this other guy, I think his name was I forget his name. His name was Peter something, I think, and he was just kind of there. He was like the, fifth fiddle to these other people that were like the sweethearts of the scene. And then a year later, he was the only one still doing it, and he was hilarious because he'd been working so hard at it.
Yeah.
And I was like, who would have suspected that he would have been that? And so like I always remember that, and I'm just like, I'm not the only one here because I failed at it. I'm the only one who's really still working at it. But I did hit a wall with open mics because I'm just like, I can't listen to your... There was like an increase in like misogynist douchebags coming to these. I'm like, I can't listen to this anymore.
Right.
There were so many where I was like, I also started getting more involved with sketch writing, which I loved. That was what I did before I did any stand-up. I used to love writing sketches.
Yeah.
And I was doing more of that. So it was always like, well, I can do 3 open mics tonight, or I can do 1 and then go home and work on those sketches. And so that's kind of what I did. And then for the entire time that I was working on the musical, I was doing almost no open mics. I would do shows when people put me on them.
Yeah.
But I would just I would go to work, and then I would come home, work on the musical all night, and then work on it in the morning before work, and then go to work, and then repeat. It would get to the point that if somebody was like, hey, do my show on Wednesday, I'd be like, okay, but I really just wanted to go home and work on the musical more. But
right. No, yeah, exactly. And like, to have that same thought of, I could go do open mics, or I could go and edit this, or I could work on booking something, or I could send a bunch of emails about getting my show listed.
Yeah.
Like stuff like that.
Yeah.
Just kind of even if we still got to work regular jobs.
Yeah.
Like it's still that it moves towards what I think we want.
And it definitely does. And like, it's funny, like at the beginning you were mentioning like how I love prog rock and everything like that. And I do. I love Pink Floyd's The Wall. I love Jethro Tull. I love Yes. I love all those like long-winded, almost exhausting prog rock bands. And I think I've always enjoyed like a long form thing in comedy. Like when somebody has like a 10-minute story and it's hilarious the whole way through. I know it's like, I don't know where we stand as a society on Bill Cosby anymore. He was found innocent, but like we all know he's probably a piece of shit. But before any of that was really being talked about, his album to Russell, my brother, whom I slept with, it's a 22-minute, it's the whole side of the album, one long joke story about him and his brother sharing a bed when they were younger. And I remember like the first time I heard that, I was like, oh my God, this is like, it's one of my favorite things in comedy. I can't listen to him anymore because it just... he's a disgusting human being, and I can't. I'm not at a point where I can enjoy the stuff he made without thinking about him.
Yeah, exactly. Comedy is like one of those things where when you really don't like the person, it's kind of
tough.
hard to like their comedy.
And it's tough because Cosby for comedy like was one of my biggest heroes just because he could do long form comedy, and I always liked that.
I always was envious. Like I couldn't do really long form stuff until the last couple of years.
Yeah,
and I feel good that I'm able to do it. But
I couldn't either.
Because that's the stuff that sticks. I think.
I think so too. Yeah, I think I know when I moved here, there were a lot of people just doing like short one-line comedy stuff, and every open mic set sounded like all these people were like, "I'm writing my 5 minutes for Conan," and I liked that, but like everybody kind of sounded the same to me, but with like, depending on what their ethnicity was, their opening joke about what ethnicity they were would be different. And like, it was a lot of the same stuff. And people kept telling me like, shorten your jokes, write shorter jokes, write set up punchline, write set up punchline. And I was like, if I can do that, but like a long 5-minute thing where it's all short, like if I can figure that out, that'll at least help me stand out. And people still make fun of me for it, but at least now, like when I have a 5-minute joke, it's a joke the whole way through. Like it's set up punchline, it's like a story told with that. So I've always been drawn to like the longer things. And that's why like in high school, I got so much more into like prog rock. Cause I'm like, here's this long sweeping, it's almost like an opera that they recorded, and it's like crazy talented musicianship and everything like that. So I think like making it into a musical, my friend Tim, who you moved into his room when we were roommates. Yeah. He came back and I told him like, oh, I wrote a musical. And he came to the show. He's like, this seems like a perfect combination of all of your unique talents. Like you were never one for, I'm going to write a short thing. So here's your chance to write something that takes an hour and a half, a double album. you get to basically just write sketch comedy, but super long form, and you get to write music for it. And it was kind of like, I don't know. I feel like getting to work on something that's like long and as like it and satisfying. Like it's a long but satisfying story.
Yeah.
It makes sense. It's coherent. Like that to me is worth way more of my time than like, oh, I'm working on a new 5 minutes. I still like doing that, but it is. I'm starting to enjoy it more because I'm starting to have more stand-up inspiration. But for a while, it was like, why am I even talking about this thing? I don't even care about it. I'd rather work on like a script, like a pilot script or other things that I'm working on. So, I don't know. It's been a good confirmation that like I'm way better at writing like a long form thing than, or I'm way more interested in that.
Right.
I guess
You're finding what your strengths are.
Yeah.
And what you're good at, and what you enjoy.
Yeah.
Which ultimately is more rewarding than a like 15-minute set at Comedy Club.
Yeah. And I mean, I've done those sets and it's like, oh great, I did a show, but it's like, it's over. I've been thinking about it more like a food pyramid. And if I'm being like totally honest, like stand up is like the sweets and fats up at the top because it's delicious and you get it and you're like, I'm addicted to this and it's immediate. That's the thing is it's an immediate sugar rush. But then it's like, okay, now it's over. And like writing, like I started writing like I wrote like a pilot script this past summer that I'm still working on, but like things like that and like sketches, those are like the middle, like fruits, vegetables, where it's like, okay, it's kind of in there. And then like this big thing at the bottom is like the musical, where it's like, this is taking up the most of my time. It's also the most satisfying. Arguably, it's not healthy how much they're recommending I do this for, but like it's like the base of everything. And I think I think it's important. It's also I think it's also interesting that like there's like you and me. I don't know. There's definitely other people that are working on their own thing. Pat works on his comics and like starts really unique shows, and those are the things that we enjoy the most. And it's also the things that like separate us from the 3 million other people in this city and the world that consider themselves a comedian. Yeah. So many people are like trying to just go up and do their 5 minutes and get on TV, and that'd be amazing. But I don't know. I've always been way more drawn to I've also always enjoyed writing more than performing. And a lot of people that are like pure, like, I just want to do stand up, they don't understand that. And they're just like, I love performing. They need that gratification. Yeah. They live for that. And I do love that, but it's like, that's not what's getting me out of bed so much as like, I can't wait to work on the actual joke thing. So I've always been way more drawn to that. So like taking on these long form things where it took me a week after the musical to really, like, I was depressed for a couple of days because like, oh, it's over. I don't know if it'll happen again. And then a week later, like I looked at my notes and I was like, oh, I can work on this. And now I'm back to normal because it's like, oh, I'm excited that I get to work on these again. Excellent. I get to write 2 more songs for it. I get to tighten this up. Yeah. So like we're making it a full 2 acts. We're adding an intermission and we're changing one of the songs around and we changed some structural things. And like now I'm like excited to work on it. We're sending it into festivals and workshops and like trying to get like theater people to see it.
Absolutely. So like, I hope you're sending it to like off-Broadway places in New York.
Yeah. So we're going to try to get like another small run of it at like, if not the Creek, then someplace like the Pit or a place like that. I mean, Puffs is an off-Broadway Harry Potter spoof that's on Broadway right now. It started at the Pit Underground. So like, these places, like you can run it there for free. They'll make a cut of the door, but like there's places, New York's like the best place to write a stupid thing and get it in front of people. Yeah, and that's why we're still hanging in, and I like that we're both doing that, man. Yeah, no, it's cool. It's always cool to see people that keep working on cool stuff. Which is ultimately, and this might be a good way to put a bow on this. This will be its own episode, I think. Oh wow, how long were we talking? We've been talking for an hour. Oh okay. So that's repeat guest. Yeah. And ultimately, like, if there's anything that you could, if you're not one of me and Kevin's friends, and you maybe do, and you want to do comedy, or you do comedy, if there's anything that you take away from what we've discussed tonight, it's that you just don't quit. Yeah. Just don't quit. Oh my God. That's really what it is. Like if you love it, even when it sucks, you'll still have your love of this thing. And no amount of cynicism can touch that. Yeah. The people that quit, we can end it after this, but I think the people that quit, like going off of what you said, they're the people that never really enjoyed it, or they never found what they enjoyed about it. Like they were like, oh, I just want to get the laughs and do that, but they weren't doing jokes they liked, or they didn't like the writing side of it. And if you don't like that, you're not going to write anything good. You're not going to, and then you're going to bomb, and then you're just going to get cynical and quit. But if you find like, oh, I really like, if you find out that you like writing jokes, even when they fail, you just love that. Those are the people that stick with it.
Yeah.
If you find out that like, oh, then you get into sketch or improv, whatever it might be, and like now you love that, like that's the thing that you live for, and then it doesn't hurt you as bad when you're like, oh, I bombed at a mic. Who cares? Those people don't matter. I have a whole other thing that I'm working on. So when you find the thing that you want to work on, and that'll get you out of bed, even when it's been 5 or 6 years and you're still virtually unknown in a city of 8 million people.
Yeah. It's like that Matthew Nathanson song, like The Little Victories.
Yeah.
You just have those little things.
Yeah.
Dude, this was great.
This was great, man. Thanks for having me back on.
Dude, no problem. Thanks for doing it. And I look forward to seeing your show again.
Thanks. I'll look forward to seeing yours.
Thank you, man. Okay, folks, that is our show. If you'd like to follow the progress of the Lewis and Clark musical, you can follow on Twitter. We Wrote a Musical is Kevin and Pat's podcast that they do about musicals and the process of writing their own. And as always, you can check out my website, willcareyisfunny.com, or my Twitter @comicwillcarey for a list of my upcoming stand-up shows. And thank you. I'll see you guys next week between awesome and disaster. Take care, everyone.